What's going on, guys? Dawkbro back again. Hope you're all fantastic today, and welcome back to Fazbear Frights, what you need to know, okay? The next book is Bunny Call. As you can see, we've got this cute, adorable little bunny with some symbols, a lovely bow tie, and a lovely vest. And he looks kind of cute, doesn't he? Well, his face is quite creepy, actually. So, yeah, the first story in Fazbear Frights number 5 is Bunny Call. The next one is Into the Flesh. And the next one after that is The Man in Room 1280. Okay? Apparently, all of the stories are interesting. The first one was really good, actually. I enjoyed it. Nice and simple. Not overcomplicated, not confusing. Not a confusing ending. Just a nice Goosebumps-style story. Really enjoyed it. There's not really much to talk about it, to be honest. I have a few theory connections to do with the story, but again, it's just theorising. I'm not confirming things. There's a kind of small link with FNAF 4 for you guys to think about. And that's basically it. That's all I had. Just a connection with FNAF 4. So for this story, guys, I'm probably going to give it about a 7 or an 8, okay? I really enjoyed it. It was like just a nice, simple horror story, okay? And I loved the ending as well. The ending was really cool, nice twist, and it was a really good story. Just imagining your brain. When I read the FNAF stories, like my brain just like pictures the scenes and the characters, and there's some really like good scenes. I've even wrote down like good scene. Because you can picture this being in a horror film, like a short horror film. Okay, guys, so let me just do a small summary. I don't think this episode's going to be too long because, again, it was quite short and straight to the point. So, Bob is the main character of today's story. He is a father with 3 children, okay? And he has a wife called Wanda. He has 3 children, one 10 years old called Tyler, one 7 years old called Aaron, and a 3-year-old daughter called Cindy, okay? And Bob, straight at the start of the story, he seems very miserable at the moment. Very miserable, getting old, you know, he's a dad, he's got 3 kids, demanding, you know, very hyperactive. He has a wife that tells him to do things all the time. And he seems very miserable. And straight to the point, he doesn't want to go on vacation with his family. He wants to have some alone time. He wants to be alone. He just wants a break from his family. I wouldn't know that, but anybody who's had kids, I don't know. I'm guessing it's very stressful. So he just wants to have some time alone. And he's sad that he's getting old. He looks in the car mirror and he sees that he's got wrinkles and stuff. Not the way he used to be. He's always reminiscent of his childhood throughout the story as well, looking back at scenes, fishing with his dad. So yeah, he doesn't want to get old, and he's getting a bit. He wants to be young again, you know. And I'm guessing most people are like that when they get older, right? When they've got kids, I'm guessing they do reminisce of the past and, you know, miss it. I've wrote down, Bob feels like he doesn't have any control. He does love his wife and kids though, but sometimes he just wasn't in the mood to have family togetherness at the same time. So, you know, a bit divided with his mind, I think. So, Wanda, the wife, decides to book a camping trip, okay, with the whole family. You know, those big camps in America where there's loads of families, loads of cabins, and there's a bunch of activities to do there, like a big camp. I've never done it before, but the book explains it well. It's just like a family vacation thing with a bunch of other families, and there's loads of activities to do. And the camp is called Camp Atenia. I hope I said that right. Camp Atenia. Or it could be like Camp Atenia. It's one of those. Camp Atenia, I'm going to say for now. And it's a massive camp, guys. 30 cabins, a big lodge to go and where the councillors are and stuff. A massive lake in between 2 big mountains as well, and a big lake in the middle. Really nice place. Bob does say something about the location though. He says like it's been built there and it doesn't belong there, which is interesting. Like it's been built wrong for the location, and like the lake and the mountains like don't want it there, which is interesting. The family have a cabin called Cabin Nutter, and they joke about it saying like you know, it's a cabin for the nut jobs, you know. Interestingly as well, guys, the cabin was the furthest away from the car park area, but it was right next to the edge of the woods, okay? So the cabin's there and the woods are right behind it, and it's probably like a big open stretch of woods. Bob has to do everything, okay? So Wanda leaves Bob to pick up all the suitcases to take to the cabin, long walk to the cabin, you know, while Wanda goes and socialises with the kids and stuff. And Bob says that he does love his family, but sometimes he needs a breather. He says he doesn't like them all the time, which is a bit harsh, really. While Bob's carrying the suitcases and stuff, he's like, I love my kids, but I don't like them all the time. You know, I need a breather, I need a break sometimes. So Bob seems to be a bit lost, okay? So, you know, he's going through that stage in life where he's like, do I really love them? Do I really like them? Am I happy at the moment? So, yeah, I think everybody goes through that once in their life, or twice, or 10 times. I think he needs like a realisation, kind of like, what's it called? Ebenezer Scrooge from the Christmas Carol. Like, his mindset's a bit, you know, all over the place. He needs something to get him back into reality. So Wanda gives him a list of the activities to Bob. Wanda goes to Bob. Okay, here are the kids' activities. Go to the lodge and give the receptionist the activities and she'll sort it out. Okay, and Bob's like, oh my God, okay, I've got to do something else now. Great. So he goes to the lodge and he speaks to the receptionist called Marjorie. And Bob gives Marjorie the list, blah, 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 nice and easy, blah, 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 done, done, done. And while Bob's about to pick up the other sheet, you know, for the activities that have been placed, Marjorie goes, do you want to sign up for Bunny Call? And Bob's like, what? What's Bunny Call? So, Bunny Call, guys, this fellow, is basically a prank, okay? When they all get first introduced into the camp, Bunny Call is basically like a prank, okay? So Ralpho, the rabbit, his name is Ralpho, goes to the cabins who have signed up for Bunny Call and wakes them up at 5 a.m, okay? He goes into the cabins from 5 to 6 a.m, goes into the cabins, starts clashing his cymbals and screaming to wake everybody up, and it's like a prank apparently. And it seems like Marjorie's done it before because she's giggling about it. She knows, you know, what's going to happen. It's a fun prank that the camp's displayed, okay? Now, let me read a description about Ralpho. He is a little bit different to the picture, okay? This Ralpho looks like one of those small cymbal monkeys, right? But Ralpho is actually like 6 foot tall, and it's very big. Do you want to sign up for a Bunny Call? She asked. He must have misheard her, Bob asked. What's that? Marjorie turned and pointed towards a tall rabbit standing in the far corner of the massive room, under an antique canoe hanging from the vaulted ceiling. The rabbit, which had bright orange fur, wore a white and black checkered vest and a yellow and white polka dot bow tie and a black top hat, through which its floppy ears stuck straight up. The rabbit held cymbals like old-fashioned wind-up monkeys used to have. Bob blinked. How would he miss the rabbit when he first looked around? It was like missing an anaconda in a pen full of puppies. The rabbit did not belong. It really did not belong. Bob was mesmerised by the rabbit for several seconds. He couldn't tell if the rabbit was a person wearing a costume, or one of those creepy animatronic things he had seen in a couple of restaurants his family had visited when he was young. In any case, it wasn't the kind of rabbit that made you want to cuddle up to it. Its eyes were a little too big to be friendly. They bordered on crazed. Okay, so there's a little description for Ralpho. His name is Ralpho. Marjorie explains, like I said, what Ralpho does. So the thing I want to say straight away, guys, is Ralpho was just stood in the corner of the room. It doesn't say if it was moving or not, or whether it just stood still like a statue or something. And throughout the story, until the end, we don't know if it is a costume or an animatronic. Okay? remember that, please, because that's interesting. And because of Bob, you know, moaning about his family and stuff, being on schedules and times, you know, do this, do this, do that, do this, do this, wake up early, blah, blah, blah. Bob wants to do a prank, okay? So he does sign up for the buddy call, okay? So he signs up for it and he's feeling happy now. Like, yes, this is going to be a really funny prank for Ralpho to come into the cabin and wake everybody up and traumatise everybody, get everybody up early. You know, kind of like revenge, but, you know, just a prank. It's nothing serious. He didn't sign up for Ralpho to come into the cabin to kill everybody. Or did he? So, Bob goes back to the cabin, and we get a little description about the cabin, okay? So, it's a bit bland and weird, and it's a big cabin, okay? So, there's a bottom floor, and there's also a top floor as well that you get use ladders to get up. There's a bed in the loft, the attic area, and downstairs are other beds and stuff, okay? There's also a trap door, okay? And as soon as I saw that there's a trap door in this cabin, I was like, yeah, something bad's gonna happen. There's a trap door in the cabin, guys, in the centre that leads to a crawl space under the cabin, okay? Which is really weird, right? Really weird. I don't know if that's normal in America. You'll have to let me know that there's like a crawl space in a cabin on holiday, a vacation. A little bit weird in my opinion. But yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, maybe Ralpho's going to come through there or something. Then there's some story filler, guys. You know, just stuff of them having a barbecue on the evening and having family games and stuff. And Bob not enjoying it. It's as simple as that. Just the fact that Bob wasn't enjoying the experience at all and didn't enjoy fatherhood sometimes. Doesn't like being a dad. Just wants a break. Okay? I was going to skip this, but I just wanted to let you guys know. When they go back to the cabin and Cindy's in bed with them, because she's still free, you know, likes to sleep with the parents. They tell Cindy a story that she always likes. And stories in the Fazbear Fright books sometimes have a connection. I don't know if this one does, but you guys can have a judgment on it. So it's about a caterpillar that builds a cocoon to turn into a butterfly, but he doesn't build it right. So he has to rebuild his cocoon again to turn into a butterfly. Okay, so his first attempt building a cocoon failed, so he has to do it again to turn into a butterfly. Any connections you guys can theorise in the comment section. Then it gets straight into Ralpho. Okay, so everybody's asleep now. Everybody snores, by the way. This is a good point to make. Everybody in the family snores apart from Bob. Okay, so all of them have earplugs in. Okay, you remember that because that's going to lead to what happens later on. They can't hear anything when they've got earplugs in. Okay, to block out the snoring. Apart from Bob. Okay, because Bob takes them out later on. Okay, so Bob's just chilling in bed, you know, looking around. He can't really sleep, but he loves the sound of nature. So the window's open next to the bedroom, and because Wanda loves the air coming into the fresh air, and Bob loves the sound of nature. Brings him back to his childhood. It soothes him to try and get back to sleep, and. A symbolism here is an owl, okay? And Bob talks about it. Here's an owl in the forest. And the owl, okay, his father told Bob that an owl is can be a harbinger of death, okay? The symbolism of death. Or renewal and rebirth, okay? Again, renewal and rebirth is similar to the caterpillar story. Building a cocoon. Builds it wrong, so builds it again. Interesting. When he was cuddling with Cindy and his family, and he realises that he is happy with his family. He is happy. Okay? And as soon as he realises that, he remembers Ralpho. Okay? And then he suddenly feels guilt. Okay? He's like, oh God, what if Ralpho comes in and it really scares Cindy and she's going to be traumatised for life? I feel so bad. Wanda's gonna hate me. The vacation's gonna be ruined. He feels really, really guilty about it. You know, he just puts it to the side and be like, you know what, it'll be fine. You know, it's not going to be serious. What's the worst that could happen? Interestingly, after that, guys, Bob falls asleep. Okay. But he wakes up sweating and panicky. If any of you guys have woke up like that, I have before, where you just wake up sweating and panicking and breathing really quickly. Like something's happened, and he looks around and everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's normal. And he realises that he did have a dream about Ralpho. Okay, he had a nightmare about Ralpho. Okay. And he gets up and looks in the mirror, and he looks terrible, okay? Bloodshot eyes, messy hair. He says he looks like he's made a deal with the devil. He thought he made a deal with the devil, signing that contract to get the bunny call to come in. Okay? It's 11:50 p.m. when he wakes up. And he's like, yeah, I need to cancel Ralpho. I've just had a nightmare about him. It's not going to go well with the family. I need to go and cancel him. Okay? And each cabin has an emergency bell. Okay? Because obviously the lodge is closed. It's late, so they're not going to be open. And each cabin has an emergency bell in case of emergency. But Bob thinks like, oh, this is just going to be stupid. If I ring the emergency bell trying to cancel Ralpho, I'm going to look really stupid. And it's going to be really embarrassing for me. And Wanda's going to be unhappy anyway. The fact that I booked Bunny Call in the first place, right? So again, he tries to get over it. And he's like, oh, let's just leave it. What's the worst that can happen? It's just a rabbit, you know. Nothing bad's going to happen. But weirdly, guys, throughout the night, Bob kept waking up, like, constantly. Like, 10 minutes sleep, wakes up. 10 minutes sleep, wake up. 20 minutes sleep, wake up. 5 minutes sleep, wake up. So throughout the night, he kept waking up all the time. So, you know, you can see how that would, like, affect his brain, right? Constantly waking up over all the time. When he wakes up again, he looks around and the cabin's extremely dark, okay? You know, it's not like at home where he wakes up and he can see things around the room. He's in the middle of nowhere, in between some mountains. You know, there's not a lot of light pollution, so it's incredibly dark in the cabin. There's no lights outside. And at this point, guys, I could tell that Bob was scared of Ralpho. He kept thinking about it, like, oh, what if Ralpho's in the room? Did I hear something outside? Is that Ralpho? So, yeah, he's very anxious about it. And he seems to be afraid of Ralpho himself. Because, you know, he's had a nightmare about him previously. So, he goes outside to check. You know, he did the right thing, I'd say. A normal thing I would do is just to ease my mind. I would go outside and look around. So he does. He opens the door outside and just looks around. And because it's so dark, he can't really tell where things are. His eyes need to, you know, get used to the dark. And he's looking around and he sees a guy on the other side of the cabin smoking. And they have a conversation. Again, this conversation's interesting. I'll let you guys think, see what you think. So, this guy's called Philip, and he also signed up for Bunny Call as well, okay? So they've both signed up for Bunny Call, and Philip says to Bob, you know, probably not the best decision, okay? And then they have a weird conversation out of nowhere. Bob talks to Philip about making stupid choices and actions and regrets them after. Instant connection with Bunny Call. He talks about a childhood mistake where he threw a basketball in a bowl at his parents' house and it broke the shelf and loads of things fell on the floor. Making stupid choices and actions and regretting them after, just doing it then and there and instantly regretting it. Like Bunny Call. And interestingly, while they're talking, there's like noises in the distance. It's never confirmed if it is Ralpho or not. Bob hears things out in the woods and stuff, and he's like, is that Ralpho, or is it just an animal? You got to remember, guys, they're in the middle of nowhere, so there are going to be animals and stuff around. Philip randomly talks about a deep conversation. Really weird. Philip talks about his dad changing. So when Philip was 5, his mum died. Okay. And as soon as Philip's mum died, his dad completely changed. Okay. Completely changed. He turned nasty and horrible towards Philip. And then really weird, really weird, guys. While he's talking about that, he puts his flashlight on his face, right? And stares at Bob and goes, I've become just like him. And then he walks away. Really weird. Strange. Whether that's a link towards William Afton, you guys think, you know, we never see the mom in the FNAF stories. Maybe William Afton's wife died unexpectedly, and that made William crazy and turned horrible and stuff. We don't know. And at that point, guys, Bob's like, yeah, I need to go and cancel Ralpho. So he goes to the lodge, the big lodge, and all the lights are off, so everybody's asleep, so he can't do anything to cancel Ralpho. Okay, the bunny call. So he starts to walk back to the cabin, okay, in the middle of the darkness. Dark in the middle of the night? In the middle of the night, just very dark. A squall echoed through the trees. Bob whipped around to look back at the path he'd come down. He stopped thinking and simply went into action. Jogging again, he retraced his steps until he was about halfway to his cabin. His family. Then he heard a scuttling sound that froze his intestinal serpents and turned his spine to ice. Was that Ralpho? Bob aimed the narrow beam of his penlight into the underbrush on either side of the path, the pale white light landing on drooping leaves of a wild rhododendron. That must be a type of bush. The plant seemed to be trembling. Surely Bob was imagining that. Of course he was. The wind was just stirring the slick green leaves. Or was it the wind? The leaves weren't moving in a direction that made any sense. An abrupt explosion of snaps and crackles stirred up a rustling that seemed to move away at the right angle to the path. Without thinking about the consequences, Bob veered off the path and dove into the thick vegetation. He followed the sounds. Pop, crinkle, ting. What was that sound? Bob stopped abruptly, losing his balance. He threw a hand out to catch himself, and he scraped his palm on the rough bark. He turned off his penlight. He listened. There it was again. Barely there. A slight metallic rattle. Was it a cymbal? So yeah, well, Bob's walking back to the cabin. He hears things around. He hears bushes move, and he hears metal clanging, and he thinks it's Ralpho on his way to the cabin. Okay, so he makes his way back to the cabin because he thinks Ralpho is going to, go into the cabin. At first, guys, he just thinks it's a prank that the counsellors of the campsite are playing a prank on Bob. Because he signed up for Bunny Call, they're playing a prank on him. So that, Ralpho is around and they're just playing a prank. A counsellor's in the costume, being stupid and trying to scare Bob. But again, he says that he doesn't know if it's a costume or an animatronic, okay? So he runs back to the cabin and Ralpho's not there. All the family are asleep, okay? He runs into the cabin, opens the door, looks around, everything's fine, and he shuts the door, and yeah, it's 5:25 a.m. when this happens. And interestingly, he says like he thinks that time's gone by. It feels like he's been outside for ages, but he hasn't, okay? So yeah, really weird. It's almost like his brain is like in its own nightmare, like he doesn't know where time is and stuff like that. Remember that, okay? And then there's a knock on the door. straight away. So he shuts the door, looks around, everything's fine. Not like that, like... The door behind Bob's back vibrated when a knock sounded. Bob whimpered. He stayed very still. Maybe if no one answered the door, Ralpho would go away. Another knock, this one louder. Bob got to his knees. He waited. Another knock, more insistent. Okay, playing possum wasn't going to work. Pretty soon, Ralpho would be pounding on the door, and he'd wake up Bob's whole family. Wasn't that what he was trying to stop? Bob turned, grasped the knob, and opened the door a few inches. He looked out. Ralpho had been startling to behold from across the huge lobby in the lodge. Close up, Ralpho was just plain alarming. Taking a half step back, Bob braced 1 foot behind the door, held the doorknob firmly, and blocked the opening with his body. Bob looked up at Ralpho's face. Yes, up. Too far up. Ralpho was over 6.5 feet tall, just to the top of his head. His ears went up another foot or so. And speaking of his head, it was a disturbingly big head, almost the size of one of those exercise balls Wanda liked to sit on. Bob forced himself not to look away from Ralpho's eyes, even though they were an unsettling bright pink. Ralpho gazed down at Bob and waited. Ralpho? Bob's voice cracked like he was barely older than Tyler. He cleared his throat and tried again. Ralpho, I'd like to respectfully request that we cancel our bunny call. Ralpho didn't move. I'm sorry you came all the way out here, Bob continued, and I appreciate your time, but I've decided a bunny call isn't the best thing for my family. Ralpho was immutable. Silent, okay? So, like I said, Bob ploughed ahead. With due respect, we won't be needing your services. Bob held his breath. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. Ralpho slowly nodded, turned, and headed down the steps of Cabin Nutter. Bob shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it, sighing deeply. Tears filled his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time he had been so relieved. Okay? So Ralpho's gone. Cancelled the bunny call. And Wanda wakes up and is like, Bob, what are you doing? You know, why are you awake? Get to bed. You know, it's fine. So Bob's relieved now, like it's over. Finally, he's still at the door at this point. Oh, it's over. Ralpho came back. Okay. He looks at the doorknob and it starts to turn. Okay. So Ralpho's back. He didn't take no for an answer. He nods and walks away, but the doorknob turns again. Okay. But this is a point to make, guys, okay? I don't know whether this means anything, but, you know, with the agony and, you know, if you guys have seen all the previous summaries, like the agony has an energy of electricity. So when Bob tries to stop the doorknob on the other side to stop it from moving, he gets a shock from the doorknob. Okay, remember that because we're going to talk about that later on. That's an interesting thing. Okay, he gets a shock on the doorknob, and we know about agony and the energy agony creates from the other objects that are, you know, have been corrupted by the angry spirit, electricity. Now at this point, guys, oh my god, okay, I need to call emergency. This is weird. Ironically, the emergency bell isn't even in the cabin. It's outside. Okay, so he can't even go to it because Ralpho's outside. Okay, so he panics. He gets a chair and he blocks the door with the chair. okay, to stop Ralpho from getting in, okay? Now, a really nice scene, guys, is the door does open a little bit, and Ralpho's paw, okay, is seen trying to get into the cabin, okay? He's trying to get in. It's Ralpho's paw. It's an orange paw, so it's definitely Ralpho. And Ralpho's trying to get in, okay? And Bob panics and, like, Bob tries to talk Ralpho out of it. Like, what are you doing? Get out. Stop doing this. And Bob has to use physical force, okay? Now, this is what's weird. Bob punches the paw. Pew, 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 to get him off the door. And weirdly, the paw becomes dark and moist. Okay, so as soon as he punches it, it leaves a mark and it gets moist. Isn't confirmed what it is yet, but you'll see later on why that happens. And Ralpho retreats and he goes away. Okay, the time is now 5:36 a.m. Okay, so Ralpho retreats. Bob checks the time, 5:36 a.m. Remember, guys, Ralpho's bunny call is from 5 till 6 a.m. Okay, remember that. Now, annoyingly again, Ralpho doesn't stop. Okay, he goes to the window next to the door. Okay, on the other side of the cabin, he goes to a window, and Ralpho tries to get in through the window. Okay, this is like proper horror vibes, okay? And I'll read this one to you guys if you want to. A whoomp sounded from under the picture window. Bob whirled into that direction. Ralpho wouldn't try to come through a window, would he? Bob quickly aimed his pen light at the large rectangular glass-covered opening above the table and chairs. He sucked in his breath when his light caught the shadow of a large, misshapen head. Oh, no, 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 Bob whispered as he leaped over towards the window. It was locked, wasn't it? The window started to open. No, apparently it wasn't locked. Or it was locked and Ralpho managed to unlock it. All locks were irrelevant to Ralpho, just as irrelevant as Bob's request that Ralpho would go away. The window opened further, and an orange paw reached through. Then an ear. Okay, so he's getting in like that. Why don't you just stand here and watch? That's a good plan, Bob. Bob's sarcastic self-talk made a point. He needed to move, so he did. Both of Ralpho's ears and most of an arm were through the window by the time Bob started beating on the ears and the arm with a tennis racket. So now Bob's like whacking Ralpho, man, because his ears are in, you know, his head's almost in, his arm's in. And Bob starts whacking him with a tennis racket. Jesus. Careful to avoid missing the rabbit and hitting the window, Bob's defensive thwacks were relatively quiet. His family's snores didn't stop. Neither did Ralpho. Apparently impervious to the blows, Ralpho kept reaching into the cabin. Get out! Bob whispered. Ralpho didn't respond. Bob looked at Ralpho's paw, which was just a few inches from Bob's chest. The paw was covered in blood. What? Blood? Bob stopped pounding with the tennis racket. He shined his light on Ralpho, whose head was now coming farther into the cabin. Bob stared into Ralpho's disquieting eyes. Are you okay? Bob asked. Ralpho stared back at Bob, but he didn't speak. Wasn't this just a guy in a freaky rabbit suit? Ralpho wasn't real, was he? Ralpho's head slid a little farther inside the cabin. Whatever Ralpho was, Bob couldn't let him in. So Bob shifted his grip onto the racket. Instead of hitting Ralpho more, he used the racket to shove at Ralpho's encroaching head. Grunting, he pushed Ralpho with all of his might. For a few seconds, Ralpho pushed back. It was like a bizarre tug of war in reverse, but Bob thought about his sleeping family and that gave him the extra oomph he needed. So Ralpho fell back out of the cabin. Okay, so the point is, guys, that Ralpho was bleeding. Okay, so remember when Bob punched his paw and like something appeared when he punched it? So Ralpho can bleed. That's not normal. That's not a costume. That's not an animatronic. Ralpho can bleed, okay? So Bob at this point is like, what? Is Ralpho real? Is Ralpho a real creature? And again, guys, when Ralpho retreats at that window, he goes around the cabin and finds the other window and tries to get in that way. He tries to open it. Right next to Wanda sleeping, okay? Right in Wanda's room. So Bob goes in, slams the window shut. Wanda does like shuffle a little bit, but that's it. And Bob's just like literally trying to keep it shut because Ralpho's trying to lift it up and Bob's trying to keep it closed. Really, really scary. Okay. And Bob knew that if Ralpho got into the cabin, something bad would happen. Don't know Ralpho's intentions, guys, what Ralpho would do into the cabin. When he's in the cabin, it's never said. Would Ralpho just wake everybody up? Would Ralpho try and kill everybody? We don't know. Okay? Again, Bob's just trying to keep him away. Okay? Constantly trying to keep Ralpho away. Ralpho keeps trying to find other entrances to get in. Okay? And yeah, Ralpho retreats. Can't get in. But remember, guys, the trap door. Okay? And Bob realises that the trap door. So Bob sits down on the trap door to try and stop Ralpho from getting in. He hears Ralpho crawling in the crawl space and then trying to push up the trap door, trying to get in. But then Bob gets a chest, a chest of drawers, drawers, whatever you guys call them, and moves it onto the trap door. And yet again, Ralpho tries to get in, but Ralpho stops. Okay, and the time is now 5:56 a.m. So it's almost 6 a.m. Okay, now this is the scene what I really liked. Okay. This was really cool. You guys got to picture this in your head because I think it's the best scene of the whole story. The cabin was secure. Ralpho was retreating. A sudden rap drubbed against the back of the cabin. The back of the cabin? What was Ralpho doing there? Nothing was back there, right? No. Wait. The loft window. Bob's stomach and heart switched places. He'd forgotten all about the loft window. Clamping his penlight in his teeth, Bob climbed the ladder up to the loft as fast as he could. Even though every step raised his dread meter higher, he really didn't want to climb up to the loft at all. If Ralpho was up there, Bob didn't know if he could handle it. But he had to. After all, his boys were also up in the loft. When Bob's head reached to the top of the ladder, he hesitated. Then he took a deep breath, shaky breath. He shined his light at the window on the far wall as he peered up into the loft. Bob's light revealed the upper half of Ralpho already through the window. Bob let out a choked cry. Thankfully, his astonishment cut off the sound in his throat, and his boys snored on. Gaping at Ralpho, Bob was momentarily paralysed. This situation was so far beyond anything his mind could process that he felt fully and thoroughly shut down. All Bob could do was stare. But he had to move. He had to keep Ralpho away from his family. Why did he just keep gawking? And suddenly, Ralpho paused in his climb through the window. He gazed back at Bob, and neither of them made a sound. Bob trembled and clutched the loft ladder so hard his hand throbbed. Outside, dawn arrived, and light shined around Ralpho's orange head, making him look for an instant like some kind of supernova monster. Bob was superglued to the ladder. He listened to his own uneven breathing, and Ralpho began backing out of the window. Ralpho retreated completely from the cabin. His head dropped below the level of the window. Then, silence all around. So there you go, guys. I love that scene. You can imagine Ralpho slowly going into the loft window, about to get the kids, right? And Bob was so just like, oh my God, what is going on here? What am I seeing? And you can imagine Ralpho going in and then looking up and staring right back at Bob in complete silence. Okay, you can imagine how creepy that would be, having this guy staring at you and just utter silence between both of them. And then as soon as dawn hit, 6 a.m, Ralpho retreated and went back because his time's up. It's 6 a.m. Interesting, right? And again, you can connect that with the 6 a.m. night shift with the animatronics. It's weird, isn't it? Ralpho retreats and goes back. This is what's weird, okay? While this is happening, guys, Bob wipes the tennis racket, wipes the window, wipes all the areas where Ralpho was because he saw Ralpho was bleeding. But weirdly, Bob never looks at the racket or the window to check if there was any blood at first. He just wipes them and doesn't look. And when he looks again, there's no blood or anything, okay? And with the wipes, he puts the wipes in his pocket. And it's never said in the book story if there was blood on those wipes, or if there was blood on the windows, if there was blood on the tennis racket. Okay? It's never said. He never looks at them and checks if it was real blood or not. Remember that, okay, guys? And then everybody wakes up, and then Bob completely changes, okay? It's like, Ebenezer Scrooge from the Christmas Carol. He's elated. He sees his family still all alive. He's had a revelation. He's been reborn, okay? He loves his family again. He's all excited for the camping trip. He's really happy. He's missed his family. Grateful for his family. He's completely changed, okay? And I've wrote down, it's interesting how we never know if the blood was real or still there, okay? It's never said, ever. Now, here's the twist, guys, okay? This is the ending of Bunny Call. Let me read it. They're all in the big area, guys, where everybody eats for breakfast, okay? And the camp owner, called Evan, he owns the camp. Okay, a few announcements. Bob prepared to zone out. He figured Wanda would let him know whatever he needed to know. First, Evan said, regarding the bunny calls. Every cell in Bob's body went on high alert. He tuned in. My apologies to those who signed up for a bunny call, Evan said. They should apologise, Bob thought. Because, Bob's been traumatised by Ralpho. They should apologise. The bunny calls couldn't be done this morning because the counsellor, who usually does bunny calls, overslept. Ralpho wasn't able to make his rounds today. Bob stared at Evan. These are really great pancakes, Wanda said. Aren't they, Bob? The end. So there you go, guys. There you go. Ralpho didn't do a bunny call that night. Something else did. We've got to think about the connections with this, okay? The annoying thing is, guys, is that nobody else sees Ralpho. Okay, they're all asleep. Okay, nobody else sees the blood in the cabin. Bob doesn't check in the morning if there was blood on the wipes he used to clean the racket in the windows. Was it a nightmare? Was it all just a nightmare? Was it all in Bob's head? Or what did it really happen? And unfortunately, guys, we don't know. Okay? We only see it from Bob's perspective. Nobody else sees Ralpho. Nobody else hears Ralpho. Nobody else sees Ralpho's blood. Okay? We know that Bob had a nightmare about Ralpho previously, before he even arrived. We know that Bob was scared about him all night. Bob's sleep was all over the place. He kept waking up, sleeping, waking up, sleeping. So yeah. Was it all in Bob's head? Was that Ralpho encounter just a nightmare? Or was it, a monster? Okay? It's said that the Ralpho he witnesses is like a monster. Okay? Was this Ralpho powered by agony at that point? Was it like Into the Pit Spring Bonnie? I had a connection with Into the Pit Spring Bonnie where, the Spring Bonnie's powered by agony and stuff. The black ooze that comes out of his eyes, that's agony, okay? Remnant or whatever you want to call it. The only connection I had with that agony is simply the doorknob. That's the only connection I can say, honestly. When Bob tries to stop the doorknob, he gets an electric shock. And we know that agony, the remnant, causes energy to electricity. Okay? That's it. So that's basically it, guys. You guys can theorise what you think. Was agony the cause of this encounter? Or was it literally just a nightmare? Remember, guys, this location is in the middle of nowhere. Okay? It's in the middle of nowhere. Why would Ralpho be there and be, possessed by agony? We know for a fact that the angry spirit is causing this all to happen with the Stitch Rave story, right? So was it the angry spirit that activated the we don't even know if it's an animatronic or suit yet. The ending seems to show that it was just a costume, because it says the counsellor overslept. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Ralpho is just a costume. Okay? So yeah, you guys can decide what you think. I'm leaning towards not a nightmare, but that electric shock, man, it's a tiny little detail. I don't know. I really don't know. You guys can decide. And the connection I had, guys, is FNAF 4. Okay? If this is a nightmare, it's very similar to FNAF 4. In the middle of the night, a flashlight, Ralpho trying to get in through the door, and the windows, trying to break into the cabin. Okay? Let me know what you guys think. That's the only thing I can think of. And the system as well. How weird is it that Ralpho retreated at 6 a.m? It's weird, right? I do think it's a nightmare, guys. I think it's in Bob's brain. He kept checking the time, and he in his mindset, he kept thinking oh, it's 5:30 a.m. It's almost there. Ralpho's going to leave at 6 a.m. I know that because the counsellor has told me that Ralpho's shift is from 5 till 6 a.m. So I know, my brain knows, as soon as 6 a.m. hits, Ralpho will go away. And he does, okay? It seems to be more... It could be influenced by something with the cabin and stuff, or Ralpho and the location. It seems to be more of I don't know what you guys... I don't know the term for it, but a nightmare manic state where he is walking around and doing these things. It's not in a dream. He doesn't wake up in Wanda's bed and being like, oh, it was just a dream. He does go and shut the door. He does go outside and look around. He does put the chest on the trap door. He does go up the ladder and sees his two sons in the bedroom. Okay, because when 6 a.m. hits and Ralpho's gone, the two kids wake up and are like, Dad, what are you doing? Why are you with us? So he is doing these things, guys. It's not just a nightmare. He's doing these things, okay? So he's either hallucinating this nightmare, like, you know, remember his brain keeps waking up and stuff. So it could be just like a nightmare sleep state where he is awake, but he's seeing things still. He's hallucinating Ralpho's in the house trying to break in, okay? As this monster, as this nightmare monster, okay? And we'll never know, unfortunately, because we can't confirm it. And the author's done that because it leaves a mystery, okay? Was Ralpho real? Was this Ralpho encounter real or not? Left it to a mystery. If at the end, Ralpho goes into his pocket and looks, and the wipes that he used to clean the blood are clean and there's no blood inside, that means and confirms that it was just a nightmare state. If there was blood on the wipes, it confirms that Ralpho, the Ralpho encounter was real and that monster was real. But we'll never know, okay? And the reason why I connected it with FNAF 4 is because of the nightmare animatronics, okay? Well, when we're in the room defending ourselves from the animatronics, was it real? Or was it just a nightmare manic state? We'll never know, unfortunately. Apart from the, I don't want to go too deep, but apart from the animatronic dots in the city location map seems to confirm that it is somewhat real. But yeah, it's interesting, right? It's interesting. That's the only connection I had. I did make a small connection with the random guy telling a story about his father his mom dying and his dad going crazy. Could link that with William Afton. And that's about it, guys, honestly. But it was a really good story. Nice. Not much lore, but I liked it. Or it could lead to a lot of lore. You know, the first thing I thought of was FNAF 4 with the nightmare animatronics. Was it real? Is it real or in my head? So, yeah. That was Bunny Call, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, please. Like I said, nice, simple story. Okay? I've heard the next one, Into the Flesh, is interesting. And it's actually short. It's actually very short. So, yeah. I'm excited to read the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Lots of love. And I'll see you all next time.